Running a business comes with a lot of what ifs, but luckily there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku, and it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
My favorite thing about Shipt since I signed up for Target Circle 360? No price markups when I order same-day delivery from tons of local stores. Only a handful of alcohol retailers and items don't count. I won't lie, I've had too much fun being like, markups on groceries? Not in my fridge. Markups on pet food? Not for my DOG. Markups on tools, electronics, home goods, meds? Not in my house. Anyway, it's awesome. Order now at shipt.com/360. Terms apply.
Welcome to Farm Year Daily, a Field Forward podcast. I'm your host, David Geiger. Today on Farm Year Daily, we'll continue to take a look at Iowa crop conditions with agronomist Angie Rieck-Hinz. Then we catch up on the markets with analyst Jamey Kohake. Please be sure to like and follow the podcast as well as our social media at Field Forward Pod. We would love to have you join our community, keeping folks informed about what is affecting our farmers. This is Farm Year Daily. And joining me on Farm Year Daily, we have Angie Rieck-Hinz. She is the Northern Iowa agronomist for Iowa State University Extension and Outreach. Angie has been on the program as well, and I'm really grateful to have you here. The last time we chatted was actually during that 95th anniversary of the Northern Iowa Research Farm, so that was a really cool event. And a topic then, because it was raining then, was it was really wet in Northern Iowa, and it actually hasn't really gotten much drier since then. July's been pretty wet as well. Is that the case for Northern Iowa, and how's it affecting the farms up there?
Yeah, it seems like about every 2 or 3 days we get hit with some more rain, right? Not like a quarter inch here or a quarter inch there, but we're, it's like an inch or 2 inches at a time. So you're right. We have some. And David, you know how this is. There are areas that have really good looking crop. There are areas that it's just too wet. Everything is waterlogged. There's still water standing in places. And here we are facing another 2 to 3 inches over the next couple of days. So in some cases, that the corn crop is yellow, right? We're nitrogen deficient. Yield will be compromised in some of those fields. Soybean feet are wet. They are looking shorter and stunted and yellower in some areas, but this isn't everywhere, right? This is just a big swath from like Eagle Grove up through Mason City, north through there, and then some isolated other spots where it's pretty wet. So it's not everything, but if you're one of those people, right, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I would have said you had an outstanding looking crop, and it's looking kind of rough in some places right now.
I was speaking to your colleague, Terry Bossel, yesterday, actually, about northeastern Iowa, and it seems like rainfall there has been just slightly above average. I think it's been a good, wet July so far, but just a little bit above average. How's northern Iowa faring in terms of rainfall per the average of July?
Well, I can tell you right now, the Northern Research Farm for the month of June had over 14 inches of rain, right? Which is more than double what the average is. And right now, as of, I guess, yesterday, they were already at 2.47 inches for July. So while that rainfall amount seems not significant for July, when you add it on top of all of June, it's extremely wet. So once again, some big areas like that. I've been talking to a farmer north of Mason City, and I think he calculates he's somewhere at 200% of the average rainfall for, basically moisture from January 1st through now. Right. So that's pretty impressive, to be honest, and pretty depressing in some cases as well. So.
When you're talking about this type of wet weather, you have to mention disease concerns as well as you look into the rest of the month. Are you seeing disease pop up yet, or is it something you're really encouraging folks to scout for?
I would start by scouting. Don't let your neighbor's airplane decisions make your decisions for you. I would say up until about Monday this week, it was relatively hard to find disease in corn. But in the last couple of days, I would say I have found all the diseases in corn, right? Not all of them, but there's common rust. There's northern corn leaf blight. There's anthracnose. There's gray leaf spot for sure, which seems to be increasing with pressure as days go by. I have not found any tar spot yet. I'm not saying it's not out there. I just haven't found any yet. And then I would also say, this week, multiple counties in Iowa were confirmed positive for southern rust, which does not happen every year. We did have southern rust in northern Iowa last year, which was a little bit of a surprise. But at the research farm in Allison's fungicide trials, it was not yield limiting there. There are farmers that tell me it was yield limiting for them. And it was yield limiting at our Southwest Iowa research farm last year. So it's another thing to keep an eye on eye out for. And I'm just saying people should, depending on where that corn crop is, you should always take the time to scout, right? You know your fields best. You know what hybrids you have. You know what disease tolerance they have. And maybe if you're in continuous corn, it's a higher risk. You know that better than anybody else. So people really should just take the time to go through those fields, right? We want to protect the leaves, ear leaf and up. That's what fills grain. Gentry, my colleague Gentry and I at the research farm on Monday found common rust, physoderma, northern corn leaf blight, and just the beginnings of gray leaf spot all on one plant, which seemed a little excessive, right?
Wow,
but they've had so much rain. It was all very low pressure, right? But it was just amazing to see that you could have so many things on one corn plant.
Someone tell that corn plant it's not a competition, right?
Exactly.
They're not trying to catch them all.
Yes. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what develops. We've cooled off for a few days. That might give our tar spot an opportunity to develop. It's up until now had been really kind of too hot for tar spot. And to be honest, it's going to be hot. Sounds like it's going to be hot again next week. So even if you have tar spot, it may just not develop. It may not move up that plant where, the environmental conditions, not just moisture, we have to think about temperature too, have a lot to do with that. And then if we talk about soybeans, I'm just going to say this. I have been amazingly surprised to see very little disease pressure in soybeans. And because we have so much standing water, even around the potholes where there's water standing or it's recently drained away and it's still really muddy out there, even at the edge of those potholes where that water has been standing, you would expect to see more disease pressure. And I have not seen that. And I've had a couple of farmers make that same observation, right? They thought there would be more disease pressure. And so far, it's just not there. But we're sort of on the cusp of, that disease pressure in soybeans tends to turn up a little bit later, late July, early August. So maybe we're just too early yet to see what's going to happen there.
How about other types of pest pressures? Are you seeing any issues with insects at this time of the year, over halfway through July?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've spent a lot of time in fields on Monday and Tuesday of this week. It rained on Wednesday, so I just didn't take the opportunity to go out. I have yet to find any soybean aphids. I haven't had only one report of soybean aphids, and that was at the Northeast Iowa Research Farm, and that was like very few aphids, right? And that was a couple of weeks ago. So I don't think that population has grown. I'm continue to be amazed by the number of people who are putting a fungicide in or an insecticide in their fungicide for soybean fungicides because we just don't have any insect pressure. There are Japanese beetles. Yes, they are feeding. They tend to feed along the edges of fields, but that is pretty much an annual thing anymore. But it takes a lot of it takes a lot of leaf feeding, right, to think about treatment for insect pests. And I just haven't seen those insects present in soybean fields. I'm going to admit, all the corn I ran through on Monday, I have yet to find a rootworm beetle, right? So we're probably just at that point where they're coming above ground. I expect that's going to happen. It happens every year. But I haven't found any rootworm beetles yet. So I would advise people continue to scout for that. It doesn't do any good to put an insecticide in your fungicide, folks, unless those insects are present, right? So
Right.
maybe you save a few bucks by not doing that.
Maybe scout a bit and check if you need to mix them up first. Is there a reason why you think soybean aphids might not be as populated this season?
It's been a few years since we've had a lot of soybean aphid pressure. Now, there were pockets of northwest Iowa and north central Iowa last year that did have soybean aphid outbreaks. This year, I think, once again, it has to do with our temperature. They don't like hot weather, so they don't tend to thrive in hot weather. And it's been June was warmer than usual, or at least it seemed that way. We have a couple of cool days right now, and then it's supposed to get hot again. We might ramp up some soybean aphid pressure, and we might not. They just don't like that hot weather. So we're just going to have to see. And it all depends on how they overwintered, where they're moving to, all kinds of things. So once again, it pays to go out and scout. It doesn't take much to go out and do a speed scouting trip to do soybeans. Just take a look. And then, we also have to think about if we use those insecticides, we can cause other problems, right? We can flare spider mites in soybeans if we use insecticide when we didn't really need it, because we're going to kill all the beneficials. So there's pros and cons both ways. But it really does pay to get out and take a walk through those fields and look.
Angie, looking ahead, anything on the horizon for ISU Extension? We're getting closer and closer to August, so I know there's going to be lots of things going on at Farm Progress Show. I know that's in Illinois, though. We have, naturally, the Iowa State Fair. Anything interesting going on with Iowa State Extension that you all are working with?
Oh, yeah, right. We have so many events. It's kind of overwhelming some days. We have our strip till field day coming up on July 30th at the Southeast Iowa Research Farm. I'm pretty excited about that. We've done a similar field day every other year for the last couple of years. This year, it's the day before the National Strip Till Conference that's hosted by Lessiter Media, which is in Iowa City. So we anticipate a good turnout. We have 12 strip till bars and some static displays that will be running. So we'll have a morning demonstration session, and then we'll repeat that in the afternoon with the same pieces of equipment. We'll be running on some wheat stubble this year. So it's really a great opportunity to see different strip till bars running in, the same field conditions. Very rarely do we get an opportunity to showcase equipment like that. And so people can come out and make some comparisons, talk to the dealers, talk to a lot of people with strip till experience. There's a lot of farmers coming that have strip till experience. So if you're new to that idea and you think you want to start strip tilling, there'll be plenty of people there with a lot of good practical experience. It's a really great opportunity to think about how to maybe not do full width tillage, right? Leave some cover and some residue out there and not compromise yield. A lot of people will tell you they don't see yield compromised in strip till versus no till, right? Because we have that strip that we till and it's dark colored, right? We've removed the residue, it warms up, it drains, it dries out a little bit faster. So it's a nice compromise between full width tillage and going all the way to no till. So a lot of people are very interested in doing that. And then it brings some soil health benefits along, right? It brings some water quality benefits along to it. So there's a lot of good positive things with strip till, and you'll be able to see and have conversations with people around that on July 30th.
Angie Rieck-Hinz is the Northern Iowa agronomist for Iowa State University Extension and Outreach. Angie, thank you so much for joining us on Farm Your Daily.
Thanks, David.
Thanks again. This is Farm Here Daily. We will have more conversations on the way, but first, let's take a look at the marketplace. And there was some green at the Friday market close. September corn 6.5 cents higher, 408.5, with December rising 6 3/4 at 427 3/4. Soybeans in August 6 1/4 more at 1027 3/4, with September rising 9 cents at 1021. Soybean meal in August $5.30 a ton in the green at $274 even. Wheat in September 12 3/4 cents up at 546 1/4, with December rising 12 3/4 at 567 even. In the livestock market close for Friday, some negative trade there. August live cattle 12 cents a hundredweight in the red at $223.55. October down $0.50 at $219.82. Feeder cattle in August $1 lower at $3.24 even, with September falling $1.22 at $324.20. August lean hogs 65 cents a hundredweight in the green at $106.47, with October rising 2 cents at $90.62 a hundredweight. That is the Friday market close. This is Farm Here Daily. And joining me on Farm Here Daily, we have Jamey Kohake. He is a senior risk manager with Pinion, does market analysis for us. And Jamey, thank you so much for joining us on the program. How are the markets looking so far halfway through the month of July?
Well, they've probably looked the best the last couple of days per the whole month so far. Started to finally see some fund short covering in pretty much all the row crops, pretty much based on some excessive heat in the southern kind of corn belt, bean belt coming up next week. North of I-80 still looks to be just drop dead gorgeous. I mean, maybe record yields in that area. Those areas, as it looks now, Iowa was rated 83% good to excellent last Monday afternoon. So the big question is going to be, I think, are the I-states again going to offsetting type of yield damage in the south and or out east where the floods were?
As we do look at the forecast, there appears to be plenty of rainfall for July going on across the Corn Belt. What does that mean when you look at the marketplace? Are we watching for disease? Are we watching for potential flooding or flash flooding?
I would say the issue right now would be some poor pollination in the southern belt, like south of I-80, somewhere right along the I-70 corridor with the row crops. Had some pretty good heat, had some really monster rains Wednesday night, Thursday morning. In parts of Kansas City, had 10 inches in 2 hours, and we've been bone dry and needed it, but there's some areas there per the row crops that got a little bit too much, and then we're going to crank the heat right back up over 100 all of next week. But other than some concerns, along I-70, maybe some roughly, around 5 million acres, got flooded out east. We'll see how they come back, prevent plant acres or not. Lots of nitrogen loss. But to me, we're probably trading around a 183, 184 trend line yield right now. I would say it's probably a smidge too high based on current conditions, and hopefully we'll continue to see more fund short covering.
I want to look at that export report that came out yesterday on Thursday the 17th, and that was for the week before, and it showed marketing year lows for corn net sales. I think it's like 90%. It was pretty wild there. Did that impact the market at all, or was that just an expectation based off of some of the recent trade announcements in the U.S.?
It didn't really affect the market at all, surprisingly. We are above the pace needed that the USDA has forecasted. And we've seen some monster numbers pretty much going back a month and a half previous this week's numbers that were absolutely horrendous across all the grains. And, obviously we've seen a lot of front end loading, per the tariffs, let's get as much bought right now before, August 1, see what happens then. But not a really big market mover, thankfully, to tank the market, and hopefully maybe put in a short-term low this week and continue to watch the fund money.
So could you reiterate what is supporting the market right now in corn and soybeans? Because it seems like we're going to have a lot of crop, and much of it, as you just mentioned, may be sold in anticipation or concern of potential tariff announcements. But what's kind of causing this price to jump up here at the end of the week?
Right, just some profit taking. We just really kind of stalled out. With the bearish news, a little bit of heat moving in. Next week in the South. Longer term, I think you still have to remain bearish. And I think we can probably push the market up around the 440, 445 area for December corn. I would say that's about enough right now until we maybe get into the brunt of harvest after Labor Day. But funds do have a pretty aggressive short position on. We'll see where that ends up at next week, if they're back to neutral or not. But to me, like you're saying, longer term with the tariffs, once everything gets front loaded, gets consumed into the market price, we're probably still in a bearish market coming into the end of the year.
What is then the steps folks should be watching out for or taking as they approach this end of the year market closer to harvest? Is there anything to really watch for?
Yeah, to me, it's just going to be all weather. Can we sustain the dryness in the south? How many acres maybe got shook up out east? We've got a very weak U.S. dollar as well too. Can that be supportive to the exports or not, despite the tariffs for August 1? But to me, it's going to be probably one of the biggest harvested acres that we have maybe ever seen, pretty much west of the Mississippi. So I think longer term the market is going to struggle. And if you get anywhere near that 450 mark right now with December corn, I think you have to let some go.
How do you, as an analyst, as someone who watches the markets, take these tariff conversations? Because we had an experience already with President Trump and how he handles his trade negotiations. Is there a pathway that folks should watch out for when we'll see a trade or tariff announcement? Seemingly sometimes it feels like every single day there's some sort of announcement for some country somewhere. Is that something to take in stride, or how do you take that?
Yeah, so far, I think he's probably been a little bit softer than a lot of people had expected. We've extended everything to August 1. We backed off a couple of different times with certain other countries and got back after them. But to me, it's a broader market type trade of, the stock market even too, up here at record highs at times. Once all this stuff per inventory that's in the market right now, gets funneled through, and I would say it's probably coming, October time period, where I think the market could really start to get hammered. The broader markets, when we have to start dipping in, per the tariffs and everything front loaded is gone.
I'd like to point out, when you talk about the stock market in that way being record high, how is that in relation to the dollar being so low at the moment? Does that have kind of an inverse effect? As the dollar grows lower, it becomes easier for the stock market to go up and therefore other commodities to also go up?
It should work like that just based on, better demand for U.S. products. But I think longer term, it is going to be an obstacle of the dollar. If it does trend on lower, stock market goes on higher, I think the stock market would run into trouble and turn back lower again. And to me, it's probably, sometime, mid to, late fall, first of the year time period. But these markets have been the broader markets have been a lot stronger than I had expected, per the tariffs and bringing in, $30-40 billion a month as of right now. And longer term with the tariffs, I think you're going to see, who actually is paying for these. Is it us, the consumer, or are they actually making, the Walmarts and people like that pay for part of it too?
Jamey, before I let you go, I want to just take a look at the next couple of weeks as we close out July. As you mentioned, there is going to be that August 1 deadline for some of the tariff announcements. What are you anticipating in the marketplace over the next 2 weeks?
I think the market stays, next week and a half, 2 weeks supportive, maybe a little bit more of a short covering type rally. We get in August, it's all going to be about soybeans, pretty much there. I think, 1060, 1080 November soybeans, would be a nice area to sell into if you haven't sold anything yet so far. And then, just into a full blown weather market with that. And then also too, the early harvest creeping in, how good are the yields down south? We've seen the record flooding in parts of Texas, the wetness out east, and then see how these early yields are per nitrogen loss.
Jamey Kohake is Senior Risk Manager with Pinion and joins us on Farm Here Daily. Thank you so much for your time and analysis, Jamey.
Yeah.
If there's way for folks to reach out and if they wanted to talk to you, what would be the best number for them to do so?
Yeah, 785-338-4111.
Thanks so much, Jamey.
Thank you.
This is Farm Here Daily, a Field Forward podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Again, in order to continue to produce this type of local content, we would love to have you join our community. So please follow the podcast as well as our social media channels at Field Forward Pod. You can also find me on social media at Geiger Reports, as well as WHO TV Channel 13 every weekday in their morning and noon hour programs. Again, I am your host, David Geiger, and I'll be back again on Monday, everybody. Have a good weekend.